Hello and welcome to this week's Politics Today, and in this programme we will be asking, should our new Prime Minister Liz Truss call for a general election now to have political legitimacy and a mandate on behalf of the British people to govern? So in this programme today I'm joined by David Kurten, leader of the Heritage Party, together with Regan King, or should I say Pastor Regan King of the Angel Church in Islington. So welcome to the programme. Now, David, I'm very pleased that you've had a busy week in terms of political media shows. You've already been on GB News this week, so I'm sure some of our viewers watching this programme would have seen you there. And as of the recording of this programme, you're going to be on Talk TV tonight with Piers Morgan, and now you're on Politics Today, so it's quite a media fest for you. But can you just give us a little bit of an update on how your first party conference went for the Heritage Party?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I mean, we've been going for 2 years as the Heritage Party, and I thought it was time to try and have a conference, and we did. It was a week and a half ago, and we were down in Pulborough in West Sussex, and it was a really fantastic day. We had about 14 speakers covering all different areas of our manifesto, and I gave the main speech on restoring our nation, but we had Belinda Brown talking about marriage. We had someone from CBR UK talking about pro-life issues and why it's good to be pro-life in politics, as well as immigration, finance, the Constitution, and many, many other things. So it was a great day, and everyone there, I think, was inspired to go out and get more involved and more active in politics, because we really need to get people, Christians and people with conservative values, active and trying to make a positive difference in the country.
No, absolutely. And good to have you on the programme, Regan. And Regan, what are your thoughts on our new Prime Minister? I mean, she's only been Prime Minister for less than 4 weeks. We already saw the disaster of a mini budget last week that sent the markets into chaos or tailspin. And then, of course, we also had the devaluation of the pound, and now she's done a U-turn on the top rate of tax for top earners. And it looks like she is losing control of her government.
Well, she didn't have an amazing kickoff to her time as Prime Minister. I mean, you enter into a state of national mourning and crisis to some degree with just as soon as she's been welcomed by the Queen, she shakes the Queen's hand, and a couple of days later the Queen passes away. And so I mean, imagine having that just within the first couple of days. You're the Prime Minister. Just a couple of days after becoming Prime Minister, the nation goes into this period of mourning. This isn't really something you can be prepared for, although I'm sure they go through some sort of preparation for should that happen. Then after all of that subsides, she's had some time to think through, to talk through among her advisors, you know, what's the game plan here? What are we going to do? Arguably had a little bit more time because of that period of national mourning, but you know, has had a faltering start, to say the least. There's always going to be chaos with a new government. There's always going to be a little bit of market uncertainty while budgets and stuff are prepared, but already she cuts a very uncertain, fragile figure, and a figure who is indecisive. So I think we need to keep an eye on it over the next few weeks, even the next couple of months, to see what happens. At this stage, I think we may have Theresa May Part 2.
Let's hope not. And David, it'd be great to get your thoughts, because we're already hearing that political commentators are describing Liz Truss as being the first Conservative Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher. In terms of the policies that she wants to implement are truly conservative, they're not liberal. She is trying to push back against the kind of globalist agenda and the agenda of the World Economic Forum that has dominated our politics for the last couple of decades, if not the last 30 years. So what are your thoughts on Liz Truss as our Prime Minister, and also the political agenda that she wants to push through and make growth and education the centre of her premiership?
I wouldn't say that she's the Conservative Prime Minister, like a genuinely Conservative, small C Conservative Prime Minister at all. I mean, certainly I wouldn't compare her to Thatcher, who was in many ways. I mean, economically with the budget, she did try to do something Conservative, which was to lower taxes. And that's a good thing. I'm all for lowering taxes. But she would have to do that by being fiscally responsible as well and by lowering spending. But her plan was to increase borrowing. That's not Conservative at all. That's just going to increase the national debt, increase the budget deficit, so we get more into debt, and then that puts more pressure on the pound, and that's what we saw. There was a run on the pound because I think that's the two sides of the coin were not fiscally responsible. She's followed the sort of net zero plan up to now. Now she's sort of making noises about, pulling back from net zero and asking King Charles not to go to COP27. I think that's a good sign, but is there anything of substance beneath that? So, sometimes they put out things to sound Conservative, and this has been the way all over the last 12 years since they've been in power. They say things and they market things to sound Conservative, but actually they're just following the globalist agenda and carrying on the same way and carrying on with the same line, and that's what I call a bait and switch. They bait people by pretending to be Conservative, but when the rubber hits the road, when they've actually got to do something, they switch and they just keep on following the globalist agenda.
Absolutely. And Regan, we see that the former Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has warned Liz Truss and also the government that you've got to get the economy right if you're going to get re-elected. Now, we know that we are living in unprecedented times, particularly with the rising cost of living, the cost of energy prices, and life's a real struggle right now. How important is it that she tackles these issues in order to win over the trust of the British people? Because at the moment, the verdict's out.
Well, it's certainly unprecedented in regard to our lifetime, but we've had so many times of severe crises in this nation where Liz Truss can look back and can glean from the examples of people like Churchill, people like Thatcher, and can seek to take the best of those lessons that can be learned from their times as Prime Minister and apply at least the general character principles to this situation. But I think David is exactly right. In regard to the economy, something has to be sorted and fixed, but she has to be genuinely Conservative. And, we have had this situation wherein it's been back and forth and everything has been changed. It's like there's constant change. And that is not something that enables stability. It doesn't enable the nation to feel at ease. How many times yes, we had the sort of stuff surrounding COVID and all of that, the turmoil and whatnot that the legislation produced and created. The actions of the past week have done nothing to instill confidence in the nation, because not only have we had something presented that wasn't going to be workable, we then had a U-turn on that, just creating more instability. Look at what happened with the pound. It almost reached to a point of equality with the dollar. It's gone back up a little bit. I remember, Simon, when I first moved here 20 years ago, it was almost $2 to a pound. Right, it's just short of getting to that point. Now we're almost even. Not a good look.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, David, on Liz Truss' U-turn on the top rate of tax for the highest earners in the country? She's saying that she's listening to the British people by doing that, but to me, that sounds like she's losing face. And will she now lose political momentum and authority because of this massive U-turn that she's done?
I think she's done it for one reason, because she knows she can't get it through Parliament, because a lot of her Tory MPs and backbenchers have been agitating against her and are saying they're not going to vote for it. And it doesn't make any sense from a Conservative standpoint, because I actually think it's a good measure, because the 45% rate of tax only gets £2 billion. We spent more on that with sending weapons to Ukraine. We spent way more than that on foreign aid, for example. And actually, if you reduce the 45% rate of tax to 40%. There's the magic of the Laffer curve, which you can look it up in economics, and actually you may get more in the long run because people are keeping more of their money, so they work harder, so they pay more taxes because they earn more. So I don't think it's a bad thing as a policy, but she's done the U-turn on it. And so that looks really bad. It looks really weak. And it means that the backbenchers, the mainstream media, and people like Michael Gove, who seem to be lurking around in the shadows in the background, pulling strings, are winning. And she doesn't have the authority to lead as the Prime Minister. And that's not a good look for the country. That's not a good look for Liz Truss.
What I think we can look at and see in this U-turn, some of the damage that could be seen were we to go ahead and have, say, a snap general election. She has kind of dangled this carrot out there saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to cut taxes for those who are earning 150K plus. And so immediately you're having, individuals earning that pretty on side. Yeah, we're pretty cool with that idea. We always like less taxes, so we're fine with that. Then, in any case, whatever she was going to do, whatever Kwasi Kwarteng was going to present, there were always going to be opponents, because that's how politics works. You always have an opposition. You always have people who are against. The difficulty is she's gained some people, and maybe given some time, people would see, actually, okay, this isn't too bad. Maybe what she could have done was say, okay, we're going to continue, we'll keep benefits where they are. We're not going to cut benefits or public services. There was probably going to have to be some compromise on her part. But instead what she's done, and what Kwarteng has done, they say they've done this together, they've decided this by mutual agreement, is that they've turned around. So they've put this carrot out to those earning 150K plus, and now they're like, no, sorry, actually, we're listening to others, and we're not going to do that. And so we're kind of stuck in this stalemate situation where no one knows what's going on, and it creates instability.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, David, on Nadine Dorries? Not her personally, but the call that she made to Liz Truss that she should call a general election now, and this is what she said in the Times. The former Culture Secretary told Truss that she needed to go to the country if she wanted a whole new mandate. Her comments came amid increasing anger amongst Tory MPs at the radical decisions taken by the Prime Minister in her first few weeks in number 10. Liz Truss is in a kind of difficult position. There's probably around 2 years left before, less than that, before she has to go to the polls for another general election in 2024. She wants to prove herself as a Prime Minister first, but we're already seeing that the opposition is mounting against her leadership within the Conservative Party. The knives are out, and she doesn't have political legitimacy. She never won an election, and also she needs a mandate on the British people. So do you think she should go for call a general election now?
I think Nadine Dorries, in saying that, one, is quite opportunistic, because I think she probably doesn't like Liz Truss for some reason. I don't know what's gone on personally between them. But she was a fan of Boris, obviously, and then Boris is out and Liz Truss is in, so she probably has some kind of personal feelings in that area. But it's also, I don't think it's particularly clever from where she stands. I mean, she's a Tory MP. If there's a general election now, she's going to lose her seat in all likelihood, because they're trailing Labour. Now the polls are between 17 and 33% behind. So they're way, way behind in the polls. Now, polls are polls, they can change in a week or two, but I think a lot of Tory MPs would lose their seats. So why she's calling for that, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, unless she's thinking, well, she's going to stick the knife in Liz Truss, then there'll be another leadership contest, and then maybe Boris will come back, or Rishi Sunak will come in or something. Maybe that's what some of them are thinking. But if that happens, any support that the Tory party has from the general public is just going to crater to the floor, because we'll just be seen as completely incompetent. I mean, how can you have a leader, a new leader, the last one was bad enough, and we've got a new one that's even worse, and then they get rid of her? Who's going to come in next? So the only people that would benefit from that, unfortunately, are the Labour Party, because they're riding high in the polls. And I think that's not because people like the Labour Party. It's in this country, with our first past the post system, people tend to vote against someone. They vote someone out rather than voting someone in. So I think probably what's happening is that Tory support has just gone. I don't think the Labour have gained a lot more voters, because they had lost a lot of voters anyway because of their adherence to wokery and political correctness. So they're not going to get that back. But the Tory votes are just going like they did in 2019 after Theresa May betrayed Brexit. And I think this is a similar situation. Now Liz Truss has got a reputation for economic incompetence, and she's not going to restore that anytime soon.
And, same question as you, Regan. Do you think Liz Truss should call a general election? Obviously, she knows that currently, as David said, that they are trailing badly in the polls, and if election took place now, they're likely to lose it. But that she does have the comfort of having around an 80-seat majority, and Labour would need a massive swing to the Labour Party for them to overturn the Conservatives and form the next become the next government and win the next general election.
You're right about the majority, but majorities can be overturned, and I think the public opinion at the moment is so much against Tories that it could be overturned, or we could be in a situation where we could have a coalition party again. Who can forget the disastrous political decision of Theresa May a few years ago to call for a general election? Labour was at a real low. I don't know about all-time low, but it was definitely almost close to that. And she clearly wanted to kick Corbyn when he was down, and so call a general election, not fully appreciating the strength of feeling of betrayal on the part of those who supported Brexit, and a feeling that nothing really was being accomplished that was meaningful to progress it in the right way. And so obviously she was forced into a situation where she had to enter into another coalition government with the DUP, which I thought was great, actually. It made the government that much better.
It was perfect at that time. It was incredible. It was divine, wasn't it, at that time?
Do you know, but now we have this situation where, as you say, 80-seat majority. I don't really like the expression, but better the devil you know. I mean, I am just in an adjoining constituency to Keir Starmer, and one of the things that I want to ask, and sometimes do ask when people present to me their misgivings, particularly in inner city London, about the Tories and stuff, and they generally talk about all of this stuff from their local constituency or their local borough, and I'm like, okay, who's in charge of your local constituency? Who's in charge of your local borough? Who are the ones, you're talking about economic deprivation, you're talking about the streets being the way they are. That's not really a parliamentary thing, that's a local government thing, but it generally reflects you're also local member of parliament's views in politics. And across London, it's no surprise to viewers, London is red. It's not just Arsenal. But it's in this situation where some of the most deprived boroughs are and have been historically Labour. I've lived in those boroughs. I lived on the edge of Hackney, lived in Haringey and Wood Green and Tottenham both. Now live in Islington, which is known for its affluence, but underneath has a very real amount of social deprivation. They're Labour dominated. So do we really want to call a general election that could see, it's difficult. Is it 6-1, half dozen of another? I mean, maybe David has some.
Yeah, I mean, the thing in the general election, what's going to decide it is the red wall, in the north, the seats in the north, the seats in the Midlands, the West Midlands, the North East that have gone historically Labour, but voted in 2019 for Boris because he said basically 5 words: get Brexit done. level up. And that was all he said. That was his mantra. These two mantras he had.
Have we leveled up?
Yeah. Well, no, haven't leveled up and build back better. But, the joke is nothing is built, nothing is back, and nothing is better, of course. And that was the other thing he said. But, he just tried to reduce the manifesto to those two phrases. And they were very, very powerful phrases. And the enduring image was of him smashing through a wall that said, get Brexit done with a bulldozer. And people voted for that, because that's the image that people see. And that was the one reason, because that was the issue in 2019, but it's not the issue now. The issue now is energy prices and inflation and the economic collapse. And where there's been cultural issues all through the last 10 or 11 years that have been the most important things, it's very interesting that we've suddenly snapped back to the economy being the most important thing at this time. And people are now going to vote, I think, on the economy because they're really suffering financially. Jobs are going, energy prices are going up, food prices are going up, and that's more important than the cultural things.
But David, listening to Keir Starmer's speech last week to the Labour Party conference, he was talking about how he wanted to make Britain the green capital of the world by investing in green technology, even this whole energy idea of generating solar power from Morocco. And then through pipes all the way up to England to generate electricity. Now, we know, for example, which our own government is not telling us, that the reason that we're in this economic mess is because of our pursuits of renewable energy. The fact is that we've ditched reliable energy. We're closing down coal mines, we're closing down, and we haven't got enough nuclear power stations to generate the electricity that we need. And we're relying on renewable energy, such as wind, to generate electricity, because we've tied into this green agenda. Now, it's very important that we look after the planet, I'm not saying that, but what we're seeing now is that this green agenda, and this is why I believe President Trump pulled out of the Paris, the Paris Climate Accords, was primarily because he knew that it would bankrupt America and destroy America. And so the same thing has happened with us today, that the price of electricity is going through the roof. It's unaffordable. It's bankrupting middle-class families. It's sending poor people into greater poverty. Yeah, we can pursue these policies, but we can't afford them. But if Keir Starmer pursues these policies in greater measure, won't that lead our country into even greater poverty and deprivation than it is now?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. But they're all together on this. I mean, Boris, he's not Prime Minister anymore, but the Conservative Party had committed to do this by 2030 or 2035. Get rid of cars, for example. Go all electric by 2035. Keir Starmer's saying 2030, OK? Not much difference between the two, but they're all basically following the same agenda, whether it's Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, SNP. They're all doing the same thing. And this is the agenda pushed by the World Economic Forum and the sort of green movement. But like you said, it's disastrous because wind and solar don't produce much energy, and they don't produce any energy when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. We've closed 11 of our 14 coal power stations, but not replaced them with anything. They haven't replaced them with nuclear, which would provide sustainable, reliable, continuous energy, cheap energy that we need. So it's a disaster, but it's not just here in the UK. It's all over Europe. People are finding the same thing. And now, we're sort of cutting off Russian gas. Germany is in a particularly bad place, but, the UK is going to be in a bad place as well because it's all linked in. We've got to get away from this net zero climate alarmism and restore continuous, reliable energy.
Absolutely. So down to the last 5 minutes. So your thoughts really. Liz Truss needs a mandate from the British people, but it almost seems as if the Conservative Party is bent on civil war and bringing Liz Truss down. So if her own party can't unite behind her, how can she expect the nation to unite behind her?
Well, I felt, Simon, that from the beginning, I think across the board, and David probably, I think you would support this, we need some voting reform here, right? There needs to be severe very big changes in how we go about elections and how we accomplish things. We're working with an outdated formula that is unfair to direct democracy. It's not representative of the people. And we see that in a sort of microcosmic way with the Conservative Party and how it elected Liz Truss as its new leader, right? Because we had a good spread of candidates who were voted on by the members of Parliament who are Conservative. It wasn't for the whole party. It narrowed it down to two individuals who I don't believe the party as a whole would have selected. I don't think it would have been either of those candidates in the final. But that's where we got to. And so, you know, what can we do? We are where we are.
The two most popular candidates with the grassroots were Suella Braverman and Camille Badenoch. But they were knocked out, and they got two that weren't the most popular with the grassroots.
So David, your years of experience of being a politician, serving as a member of the London Assembly, you've had quite a lot of experience in politics. How does Liz Truss go about turning around her government now, gaining political authority and winning over the British people?
It's going to be very difficult, but I mean, she needs to be truly conservative. And she's already turned back from that with a little bit of pressure. But what she needs to do is abandon the net zero programme, the climate alarmism, rebuild our energy infrastructure, like I said, deal with immigration, the illegal immigration across the channel, get the fiscal situation under control. So she needs to get government spending under control, abandon projects like HS2, abandon subsidies for wind and solar power, all these funds for quangos and NGOs that really are not doing very conservative things, if you like. So if she starts leading like a conservative, she may, at least get the support of the grassroots. The problem with the MPs is a lot of them are selected by CCHQ, Conservative headquarters, the central office, and they are infested with woke people, and they have put in, since the days of Cameron, people who are going to follow the liberal progressive agenda. So if you really are a social conservative, like I am, you're not going to go very far in the Conservative Party unless you slip through the net. Camille Badenoch somehow got through the net, but not many people do that. So I think the whole party is rotten to the core, and certainly the top of the party, and that's not going to change. So we need something completely new.
And within 30 seconds, Regan, how important is it that we pray for Liz Truss and this government? Because the challenges this nation faces are unique, and we are facing the prospect of the breakup of the union as well, and also Brexit's under threat.
Well, we have no alternative. We have no other option than to pray. The scriptures call each and every believer to pray for leaders, for all those who are in authority. It's not just about whether you agree with or believe the same things, but we desire that these individuals act with righteousness, with justice, with truth. We desire that they, you said, to be truly conservative, to have a framework that is right, that is just, that is biblical, not only economically but socially as well.
Regan and David, thank you so much for being my guests on this week's Politics Today. It's been great, thank you. And I want to thank you for watching at home. I don't remember a time where we faced so much political turmoil, and already Liz Truss has been in office for less than 4 weeks, and yet people in her own party are calling her for step down and to have a new leadership election, which is absolutely nonsense. We need leadership and we need moral courage at this time, and we pray that Liz Truss would be able to show that moral leadership and courage we need. So thank you for watching this week's Politics Today.